Something magical is happening right now for the Toronto Raptors as this team is an absolute wagon. Even on nights where things aren't going right and you're facing a Pacers team that were motivated, that were playing like the finals Pacers from last year with a star guy that was formerly on your roster and locked in trying to get a win. When nothing was going right in a game that 29 teams out of 30 are going to lose, when things are going in that direction, the Raptors somehow, some way, pull a rabbit out of a hat, pull out some magic, and get a win. And Brandon Ingram is the guy that everyone has to look at. Everyone has to sing some praises to because he was once again dominant. So we're going to break down this game, the magic the Raptors are currently on. But before we dive into that, I want to thank each and every single one of you. We officially hit 40,000 subscribers. I appreciate everyone that's been tuning into the videos, checking us out over the past 8 years here now on Raptors Digest. And this team there's no better time to really lock in on this Raptors group. So we're hitting this goal. This goal, it's the mission. We're trying to hit 50K by the end of the season. I'm setting it here now. I think we could do it with how good the Raptors are and how awesome you guys have been. Let's see if we can get there by the end of this year. So tell your friends about Raptors Digest. You're enjoying the daily content. Tell people to join the Raptors bandwagon because this squad is next level. So you're enjoying the videos, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. But folks, as said, this team is just next level, and we got to start with Brandon Ingram because the Raptors came out, they were sluggish, things were getting messy, but it was BI who really was the guy the Raptors could count on to bail them out for different buckets. And tonight, 26 points, 8 rebounds, had 2 steals, 1 block, was really effective out there on both ends of the floor, 11 of 23 shooting from the field, did miss a few free throws, wasn't that efficient from the three-point line, but overall just was really, really strong for this team, and was a plus 12 in a game where you faced against the Indiana Pacers, and it came right down to the wire. But everyone has to come out and send some W's out there in the chat for BI, because not only did he have a big game throughout this entire one, down the stretch, he hit an absolutely clutch shot. I hate to say it, I hate for it to be over this guy, but over Pascal Siakam, who was locked in out there in this game. Like, Pascal was motivated. He was trying to play some good defense. Ended up dealing with foul trouble out there in this one. You know, Pascal, give him credit, dealt with some foul trouble. He was fighting. He was fighting this entire game. You know, we take a look at the full stats there, right? 5 of 10 shooting, 11 points for Pascal Siakam. He was motivated, but the Raptors had him clamped up on the defensive end. And while Pascal was given the effort, it was Brandon Ingram who hit the game winner over his head top. And I'm not going to come out here and disrespect Pascal, but it felt a little bit poetic because the Pascal trade really paved the way for the Raptors to acquire Brandon Ingram. The assets we got in the Pascal Siakam trade essentially were rerouted to the New Orleans Pelicans to make that deal go down. And on top of it, we also got a Jacobe Walter who had himself a big night tonight. And, it felt like I don't want to say a monumental game for Jacobe Walter, but a game where he made it known who he is because he's been playing a lot better as of late. But tonight, the shots were going in, which is huge because, of course, you have RJ Barrett out. And in this one, you see his stats, 13 points, 4 rebounds, 1 assist, had 2 steals, has been playing awesome defense, and you see a plus 21 for this game in a game where the Raptors won by 2 points. So Jacobe Walter, Brandon Ingram, the two pieces that the Raptors really got bad with. Ochai Agbaji was also, in that trade tree, the other player that you got mixed. But those two guys really just were the difference in the Toronto Raptors getting a win today against the Indiana Pacers. And one thing I have to say, because I don't want to move on from Brandon Ingram. I gassed him up the entire last vid that we had a vid on. But basically, Brandon Ingram, we discussed it. I reacted to all the comments that were down there. People are pretty adamant that this guy is going to be an all-star for the Toronto Raptors this season, and there's no world you can really argue against it because, overall, his stats on the season, right? Brandon Ingram's averaging 22 points per game, 6 rebounds, 4 assists. and shooting 45% of the free throw line, playing good defense, the efficiency and stuff. The advanced stats might not love him, but you watch the eye test and you see the Toronto Raptors would not be where they are if Brandon Ingram wasn't on this team, if they weren't on this group, because, you take a look at the Eastern Conference as well, where the Toronto Raptors are currently at, 14-5, 1.5 games back of the Detroit Pistons. I mean, there is no real arguing that Brandon Ingram, on top of Scottie Barnes, right, we wouldn't be in this position without him playing the level of basketball that he has currently been playing, right? The Raptors are on a 9-game win streak. I don't know, the 14 of the last 15. We take a look at the schedule, you just see a bunch of green W's, and the Pistons just lost a game too, so, they have to watch out for what the Toronto Raptors are doing, and the schedule is pretty, I don't want to say it's light coming up, but you face the Hornets, the Knicks, the Blazers. The Knicks and Lakers are going to be some tough games, but the Celtics, the Bucks, the Hornets, they should all be gettable games, right? You just see a lot of wins stacking up for the Toronto Raptors. You're beating above 500 teams. This is a group that the clutch performer is Brandon Ingram. And I asked everyone, is Brandon Ingram capable of being an all-star this season? A lot of people said yes. The one question I want to pose to now, I want to throw out to people is, can Brandon Ingram be the closer on a championship-winning team? Can he be the closer on a championship-winning team? Because that's who he is on this Raptors group, and he has been phenomenal this season. Type yes, Y for yes out there in the comment section if you think he is. Type N for no. Let me know why. I'll respond to every comment that is out there answering these questions. Do you think Brandon Ingram, this is a lot different than being an all-star, do you think he could be the closer on a championship-winning team? Because tonight, he hits a game winner out there over Pascal Siakam down the clutch. He has been dominant. He's been hitting timely shots. You look at his efficiency. It's something people are bringing up and all that, and I get it, right? I get it. He's not the most efficient guy out there in the league. He's 300th ranked three-point field goal percentage. I don't even know if that number's right, but 166 in field goal percentage. Not that crazy, but for a bucket getter, that is the style of play that you get. Can he be a closer on a championship-winning team? I want to hear it from you, but it wasn't just Brandon Ingram, and while BI is certainly the closer, Scottie Barnes is the leader of this team. He is the top dog, the number one guy. And tonight, Scottie Barnes, even though shots weren't going down, he's not knocking down threes the same way he was at the start of the season, had a few turnovers. He made a lot of the reads, made a lot of decisions that led to the Toronto Raptors getting a victory. 24 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists out there for Scottie Barnes in tonight's game, and you see 14 of 14 from the free throw line, and that is huge. I know Scottie always gets these Giannis comparisons and stuff. Scottie Barnes' free throw shooting ability is absolutely massive for this Toronto Raptors team because, he drives the lane, he gets fouled, he's not afraid of going. There's been stretches this season where he hasn't gotten to the free throw line too much, which I find very, very interesting because he's always usually playing aggressive, but he's able to knock down his free throws. He's a confident guy driving the lane, and the Raptors didn't have a lot going for long stretches out there in this game against the Pacers. Scottie Barnes attacked the rim, did what he needed to do in order to create some shots and create some plays for Scottie. And that's what your leader has to do. That's how you win games like this. This is how you can actually go on these types of win streaks and be atop the Eastern Conference, right? Be atop, be in the mix now with the Detroit Pistons who just lost a game. So they're only 1.5 games back of the number 1 seed out there in the East. That's how you do it. You have a leader like Scottie Barnes doing his thing out there on the basketball court. So phenomenal stuff there from Scottie. And, the Raptors continue to prove to the NBA why they're, one of the more upper echelon teams based off their passing ability, right? And you have an unselfish star like Scottie Barnes, you are going to remain in the mix. The Raptors are still top 3 in assists per game, out there in the entire NBA. Right, they're efficient offense. They're, they can use some improvement out there in the rebounds, the block shots. We'll talk about that center position and stuff. The 3-point percentage is definitely coming down to earth a little bit, and the strength of schedule is basically dead middle of the pack going forward. So these are all things you can take a look at. The Raptors are still in the mix, and you're getting impacts from different players out there on the court. Because I highlighted the top guys, a lot of players had a positive impact on this game. I want to give some credit to Jakob Poeltl. Again, grinded out games like this. 8 and 9 boards. Those 9 rebounds that Jakob Poeltl had in tonight's game, none of those boards felt easy. He was in the paint, beating people off. That's crazy. But, beating people around out there in the paint, getting these rebounds and stuff. Jakob Poeltl, lots of praise. The box score is not going to highlight a big massive game for Yak, but I thought he played very, very well. Mamu off the bench was solid. You want probably a little bit more of an offensive burst from him in a game like this where, you're playing against the Pacers and you're struggling and stuff. They have a lot of, I don't want to say slow-footed bigs, but more natural rim-protecting bigs, so you space the floor if Mamu's hitting his threes. Tonight, -10 for the game and 3 of 8 shooting. Didn't knock down any threes. So you want to see Mamu knock down some three-point shots. And IQ is a guy that we do have to discuss because 15 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, not efficient at all. Another bad shooting night out there for Immanuel Quickley from the three-point line, from the free throw stripe, and stuff. And there are a lot of moments. I was fairly critical of Immanuel Quickley at the start of the season about his decision-making, how he loves those quick transition threes. When he's hot, you can take them, but when you're having nights like this where you're shooting 14% from the three-point line, probably hold off on taking the immediate transition above the break rush three. Immanuel Quickley's decision-making has to be a bit more solid, but he did have some timely buckets when he calmed his game down, he got to the middle of the lane and knocked down some floaters, knocked down some shots like that. So I thought it was a positive out there for IQ, overall, even though the night wasn't that efficient. But again, there's a give and take there with Immanuel Quickley, especially when RJ Barrett's out. A guy for the Toronto Raptors that if we're taking a look at his season stats and everything, RJ Barrett averaging 19 a game on really efficient shooting for the squad, 50% from the field, 36% from the three-point line. You're going to need Immanuel Quickley to be a bit more polished with this offensive game in terms of getting buckets. So, we'll see how things go there. The latest injury update. I tried getting a video out of this earlier today, but I'm having a bunch of tech issues with my new setup. So, we're working through it. I got most of it built, most of it adjusted, but RJ Barrett got some imaging done on his sprained right knee, and Darko said it all looks good and stuff like that. But basically, the Raptors, they reiterated their test on the right knee and revealed that there's no structural damage. It's been diagnosed as a sprain and will keep him out of the lineup for at least a week. So he'll be reevaluated from there. So RJ Barrett, nothing bad, no torn ACLs or anything along those lines, but it will be at least a week. So we do need other players to step up. And one guy I do need to discuss before we close things off is Grady Dick, who has been really, really struggling, in the absence of RJ Barrett. And tonight, couldn't stay on the court. Darko Rajaković, he needed something out of someone. And Grady Dick in his 7 minutes just wasn't that impactful out there for this team and ended up getting pulled. It's fallen out of the rotation a little bit with how well Jacobe Walter has been playing. And heck, even Jamison Battle got some extra run, double the minutes than Grady Dick did tonight. And even though Jamison Battle didn't have the greatest performance, didn't get any threes off, they were glued to him like flies on honey. But he was driving the lane. I thought he was playing pretty solid defense. Jamison Battle is sneaky strong. You look at him, he's a really nice frame. He can take hits out there on the defensive end. It's I didn't mind Jamison Battle's performance, even though the stat line does look bad. But I'm worried about Grady Dick. I'm worried about Gradey because again, he has so much potential. He's shown so much upside, but he's not consistent with that three-point shot so far this season. I know it's limited run, but that's the reality of a shooter in the NBA. If you can't do it in limited spurts, you're not going to earn your way to getting those 30 minutes a night where you can, establish yourself as that go-to scorer. So, Grady Dick has to bring it together because there's so many options that Darko Rajaković can go to that are just playing better than him right now. So that's just the reality of what's going on. But let me know what you guys think about Grady Dick because that's something that the Raptors do have to figure out moving forward. But folks, you guys are the best to make this far. Subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. The Raptors are an absolute wagon. And as I mentioned, right, thank you, each and every single one of you that have hit the subscribe button. We're the goal is 50K. The goal is 50K by the end of the season. We'll do it spurt by spurt. We'll have mini goals out there over the course of the season, but we'll see if we could do it. I gotta level up some content. I'm trying to level up the content here on the videos. If you made it this far, you're a real one. Comment down below that you're a real one. I'll give it a heart with the comment section. But I appreciate every single one of you. Anyways, I'm signing out. Cheers.